At noon, the oil lamp was still burning. A rain-soaked woman stood outside the broken gate, not knocking. The rancher only said, "Come in if you plan to stay." Night shook the lamp, hoofbeats stopped, and by morning only a horse was tied at the fence. You think you can guess the rest? Stay put. See how far the lamp's wick can cool. The oil lamp hung on the porch burned in daylight. Wick cut short, its tip blackened. Thin smoke crawled up the beam, coiling in an old spider web. The smell of kerosene crept from the door into the kitchen, faint as iron licked by rain. The lamp's heart glowed red, unmoving, like something stubborn. No one remembered the last time it went out. I sat on the step outside, a small knife in hand, prying dry dirt from the grooves of my boot soles. The knife was chipped, a bright strip down its middle from too much honing. The windhook under the eaves clicked against wood, uneven. The yard was bare, dirt mixed with gravel. Old wheel ruts had hardened, rainwater pooled into shallow gray streaks. A nail had fallen near the fence, lying sideways, its rusted head caked with mud. The porch was low, the wood bowed with years. The lamp hung from a bent nail, held by wire twisted twice. A ring of soot stained the board above it. I looked up at it again. A small flame, obstinate as a sentry. Here, they lit lamps only when the nights were long, or when there was something that needed to be seen. From beyond the gate came the faint clink of reins against someone's iron buckle. Then it stopped. Wind carried the scent of wet prairie grass, of freshly soaked earth. In the stall, a horse snorted, hooves tapping a slow beat on the wood floor. The woman stood outside the broken fence, shoulders hunched, collar plastered down. Her skirt was wet from rain, its hem caked with mud, the edge heavy as if weighted with lead. She held a cloth bag stiff as wood. It didn't yield to her grip, but stood upright, rigid as a board. One spot was sewn with silver thread, the stitches short and close. She stood there as if she had been standing a long time, not knocking, not calling. I looked at the split fence post, landed on an ant passing through. It stumbled, then kept on. The tin roof at the porch edge shed drops onto the step, each one opaque. A hollow sound, then gone. The oil lamp took no notice. I heard footsteps inside the house, heel taps light, evenly spaced. A wooden door at the back of the barn eased open. The rancher stepped out. Light from the yard came in, cutting his neck into a dark line against the wall. His eyes swept the yard, past me, past the lamp, and stopped on her. He didn't speak right away. His hand still held the door edge. Dust clung to his knuckles in gray patches. He stepped once more, his heel knocking wood. Old shirt, the second button off color from being replaced. Each time he swallowed, that button brushed his chin. She didn't move, only tightened her grip around the cloth bag. Her knuckles whitened for a beat, then went back to their usual color. I saw the slow pulse in her neck. No knocking, no hand held out. She stood like someone carrying something they couldn't let fall. The wind shifted, pushing lamp smoke toward my face. The taste of kerosene touched my tongue, bitter. I turned my head aside, hearing the rusty nail creak again. The rancher glanced up at the lamp. Just a flicker, enough to see it burning in daylight. He looked back at her. "Come in if you're staying the night." That's what he said. Voice even, not high, not low. The words dropped into the yard like something heavy. No echo, just stayed there. She didn't answer. Her chest rose once, as if holding a measure of air. Her hand loosened the bag slightly, then gripped it again. The lamp still burned, the flame a red dot staring hard toward the gate. The wick bore a fine black line slanting across, sign of a fresh cut. I stood, picking the knife up by habit. The blade felt slick, damp. I slid it into my back pocket, my spine brushing the porch edge. Inside the barn, the warm smell of hay. The cow in the left stall moved its head, the neck bell touching the manger's side with a small sound. That sound made the house feel lower. She shifted half a foot toward the gate. Mud clung to her heel, letting go with a faint suck. The cloth bag pressed to her belly like a shield, the throat when the kerosene smell got too thick. No one looked at me. She extended her right hand forward, as if testing distance. Her fingers found the rusted nail on the fence post exactly. She drew back, wiping the brown stain on her finger against her skirt hem. The rancher's steps changed direction. From the barn he cut across toward the porch, past me, and reached the lamp hook. He touched the wire holding the lamp just once. The lamp swayed in a small arc. The flame rose, then lowered, quiet as before. He withdrew his hand, eyed the hook, then let it be. "Come in if—" He didn't repeat it. The earlier words were still sitting in the yard. Only now, she drew a deeper breath. She turned the cloth bag so the silver-stitched side faced in. Her other hand kept the handle tight. Her shoulders dropped, as if easing a burden. I heard fabric rub on fabric. The sound was dry, not soft. I couldn't tell if the bag was empty or heavy. The horse inside snorted again. Damp breath drifted through the stall gap. A drop from the roof struck the toe of my boot, cold. She stepped her right foot over the lower bar of the broken gate. Not wanting to open it, she chose to cross it. Her muddy skirt brushed the bar, leaving a long brown smear. The other foot followed, slow. The heel of her boot was chipped, the jagged edge exposed. A faint clicking rose from it, enough to hear. The oil lamp above looked down. The flame didn't blink. Smoke still crawled up the beam, adding a fresh thin line beside the old one. The rancher tilted his head slightly, as if nodding to himself. He turned, stepped ahead, the porch gap wide enough for two. His shoulder touched no one. She stepped into the porch shade, where the kerosene smell was stronger. The cloth bag brushed the door frame, giving a short wooden knock. She paused half a beat, then went on. I shifted aside to clear the way. The step was wet, the mud leaving faint boot marks. The wind struck my nape, cold as well water. Inside, the floorboards gave a small sound at the added weight. The knife in my back pocket pressed against my hip, a reminder. My hand rested on, scraping against the floor. One leg was shorter than the rest. It rocked slightly, then stayed still. The rancher's shadow stretched across the kitchen wall, longer now with clouds hiding the sun. The sound of a metal spoon tapping a clay bowl dry. Everything in its place, as before. I glanced up at the lamp again. The flame was still red, small, like something holding a place. She set her hand on the door frame, thumb rubbing a dirty patch, showing the bright wood beneath. A small motion, without intent, but it left the mark of someone newly arrived. "Come in if you're staying the night." The earlier words were still the boundary. She had stepped past it, but the boundary remained. The flame above held it, a stubborn red dot in daylight. No one asked a name. No one mentioned a reason. The yard dirt dried in patches on its own. Wind shifted into the house, the kerosene smell easing a little. The soot mark on the beam deepened a shade. I sat down, back against the porch, listening to the stillness standing between three people and a lamp. In the kitchen, she set the bag on the table. The table gave a hard sound, short in the wood. The soaked cloth left a dark patch that spread quickly, stopping at the table's crack. The table was old, its edge nicked as if bone had once been cut there. An upside-down clay bowl and a wooden spoon with a chipped tip lay by the cold ash stove. Lamp smoke from the porch slipped through the doorway, hanging in a thin strand. She tapped 2 fingers on the table edge 3 times. Not hard, not soft. Even paced, as if testing for a reply from within. No one asked why. The gesture wasn't asking leave, nor a challenge. Just someone measuring distance, in sound. She didn't open the bag. Her hand stayed on the handle, thumb running along the silver stitch, stopping at the knot. A drop from the bag's corner fell onto the back of her hand, sliding down a blue vein. The rancher stood in the doorway, his back to the frame. His eyes counted the kitchen, the basin catching leaks, my boots set sideways by the table leg. He didn't speak, just breathed through his nose, slow. I pushed the chair in another half-span to clear the way. It rocked. The bag. It sat on the table like something that could hear, but wouldn't speak yet. She looked at it once, heavy-lidded, then looked toward the storeroom door. He pointed out the sleeping place in the storeroom. We walked along the porch, past the oil lamp hanging lower than our heads. Its red light slid across her sleeve in a streak, then slipped away. The storeroom was small, roof low. The smell of old wood and damp leather rose from a saddle hanging on the wall. A rope coiled into a bundle, its outer fibers rough, bristling strands showing. The roof leaked at the west corner. Water ran along the line of rusted nails, gathered at the beam's tip, then dropped into an iron basin. Each drop fell with a clean sound, like a pin striking a brass bowl. The basin sat crooked, one leg bent. When a drop hit the edge, the water split into 3 thin streams, spraying as far as her boot toe. She moved her toe aside, not back. He jerked his chin toward the bamboo cot against the wall. A thin blanket folded in 2 lay ready. A pillow stuffed with rice husks, its corner torn, yellow straw peeking through. She didn't sit. Instead, she took off her outer coat, held both sides, and placed it beneath the basin. The fabric soaked at once, the basin sinking slightly, the falling sound changing, dull and short, no longer spreading. He watched that motion a second, his lips closing as if holding some sound in his throat. I watched her fingers smooth the coat's edge under the basin, precise as someone setting a tablecloth. The next drop fell without a splash. She tried to shift the basin. It didn't move. She nodded slightly, to herself. A slit of wind swept the floor, carrying the iron smell of old rainwater. I picked up a fallen nail, set it on the wooden shelf. Beside the nail was a comb missing 2 teeth, long forgotten. He spoke, not looking at anyone. Enough for tonight. She paused half a beat, her eyes following the leak's path to the basin. Her head tilted back slightly, as if measuring the sky through the hole. Out in the yard, the barn door chain rattled once. The cow shifted its weight, scraping a hoof on the floor. Everything stilled again. She set the cloth bag at the cot's foot, scraped against the wood post, whining. She tipped the dipper, water spilling through the chip, running a thin line down the back of her hand. She didn't pull away, letting it reach her wrist, then fall to the dirt in a round mark. He stood on the porch, calling nothing, asking nothing. His eyes went from her hand to the dipper, then back to the well. He set his cup on the porch rail, its rim knocking wood with a dull sound. She dipped again, changed her grip, her thumb pressing the unchipped side, the other hand beneath. This time the dipper held without leaking, the surface flat as a small mirror. She lifted the dipper, took 2 short swallows. Her lips left a wet print on the wood. She tipped the rest into the basin by the well. A sparrow swooped down, snatched a drop falling from the dipper's rim, and flew off. She glanced up for a moment, then pulled the rope, let the bucket fall, continued. The rope was wet, black where the hand grip was. He picked up his cup, blew into it once, didn't drink. The oil lamp on the porch had been out since the night. The wick was still dark, half burned, leaving a thin black line. The lamp hook's shadow fell on the porch post, shortening with the sun. I carried over 2 empty buckets. She glanced, then stopped drawing more. Her hands were wet, water marks running to the elbows. She tipped the dipper, rinsing a dry mud streak from the chipped edge with 2 fingers. The mud softened, slid away. The exposed chip showed wood a half-shade fresher, like a wound just scraped clean. He set the cup on the step, walked past the well, looked into the just-filled basin. The surface reflected a passing strip of cloud, then broke with a light wind. He went on, saying nothing. I hung the dipper on the old nail by the well post. The nail was bent, but would hold another day. She looked at that nail hook, then at her own hand. She didn't wipe it. By afternoon, sunlight slanted. A stranger rode up, stopped at the gate. The horse was coal black. Road dust dried into salt streaks on its neck. Dust clung thin on the brim of his hat, a white edge along the rim. He didn't someplace in his mind. His eyes went back to the gate, the knot, the saddle, then to the face. He said one line, "Not yours." Voice level, cold as well water just drawn. The words dropped onto the dry grass by the fence, slipped into the rough stems, and stayed. The man's mouth edged upward, not in a smile. The tapping on the saddle stopped, replaced by a faint beat on the revolver grip beneath his coat. The horse tossed its head, mouth foaming white as fresh corn. He lowered his hand, stroked the horse's neck, his eyes never leaving the storeroom door. Inside, she shifted half a step, her shadow pulling deeper, but not retreating. I heard the wet coat under the basin in the storeroom dry a little more, the basin shifting slightly. The metal's touch on the floor was faint, like someone flicking the rim of a cup. Wind carried the smell of damp iron and of hot horsehide. He didn't move. His hand opened, set against the porch post, thumb landing square on the soot mark from last night's lamp. His thumb left a narrow, straight, clean streak. The man's eyes slid to that mark, then back to his. No more tapping sounds. A pair of crows in a far tree called twice, then went silent. "Which way to town?" The man changed the question, face still flat, voice level. He flicked his chin toward the southwest. The man gave one last look through the storeroom crack, as if wanting to see someone, but saw only shadow. He flicked the horse's shoulder. The animal turned, hooves grinding 3 shallow lines into the gravel. Dust fell from his boot heels like ash. The gate stayed shut. The rope knot still tied in place, never undone. He walked along the fence's outer edge, not turning his head. I watched until his hat disappeared behind the dirt mound. The wind shifted, hoofbeats dropped to 1 beat, then gone. The cow in the barn exhaled hard, flanks rising twice. He stayed there a while longer. His hand left the post, brushed dust onto his pants, a small, final motion. No one inside the house said another word. In the storeroom, the drip from the roof into the coat under the basin had changed tone. Steady and low on the roof. In the storeroom, the coat beneath the basin was half soaked. The water's sound changed, no splash. Inside the kitchen, she sat with her back straight, hand resting on the cloth bag against the table leg. Her eyes fixed on her own shadow on the wall, the shadow reaching the door like ink drawn out by a swinging light. No one spoke. Out in the yard, a horse stopped. Its snort was dry, short. Then came the shift of reins against the bit ring, metal on metal, low. The gate stayed shut. The rope knot still in place, pulled tight. Wind leaned through the broken fence, pushed the lamp another small arc. The soot mark on the beam trembled, shading down. The rancher stepped from the house's shadow, stopping at the edge of the light. The chest of his old shirt swelled lightly with breath. His right hand rested on the post, thumb touching the soot mark from the day before. A fresh, clean streak showed. No greeting, no call. I heard the saddle leather creak under a shifting weight. A pinch of gravel shot onto the porch step, then stayed. In the storeroom, the drip from the roof into the coat found a new rhythm, like someone setting a metronome. She tilted her head slightly, listening outward. Her lips closed firm, steady. The lamp cast a thin yellow strip across the table. The chipped wooden spoon lay angled, its shadow sharp as a blade's edge. The cloth bag stood upright, silver stitch turned inward. A sound of someone freeing a boot from the stirrup. A hoof struck gravel, short, clipped. The horse snorted, blowing white foam onto dark ground. I pushed the low chair back from the door. Its legs scraped the floor, leaving a mute streak. No one turned to look. The chipped dipper hanging on the nail by the well post caught a touch of wind, its open mouth facing the porch. I looked at it. The chip was darker, like the mouth of a dried fish. Below, the water in the basin reflected the lamp as a jumping red point. A figure broke in pieces between the fence slats. No face, only hat and shoulders. The shoulders not broad, not narrow, level. The rancher neither stepped back nor forward. His other hand dropped from his side, hanging open. Wind string. She reached up for the nail. The chipped dipper slid into her hand, the sound faint as breath. Her wrist was speckled with the cold water marks from morning. She walked toward the well. The dipper's rim scraped the post, a bright scratch flashing, gone. The pulley rope squealed halfway, dropping its shadow into the basin. She dipped. The water's surface quivered at the chip, the small jag biting clean into it, the break even. The dipper filled, one drop spilling over, sliding down the back of her hand. She turned back. 2 steps, 3. He stood there, eyes on the gate. I saw his throat shift up and down just slightly, like someone swallowing without sound. His hand opened. She offered the dipper. No words. The gap just enough for his fingers to touch the wood. Water spilled onto his hand, cold. I saw the blue vein at her wrist tighten a notch. He tipped the dipper, drank twice, his throat silent. A drop fell from his chin, hit the porch threshold, split into 2 small drops. She didn't pull away. The heat from his hand ran through the cold wood. He returned the dipper, set it down on the table. The wood's thud was short, sealed. In the kitchen, a chipped enamel plate sat askew on an old cloth, round as a broken moon. In the yard, the horse breathed, the bit grinding once between its teeth. Wind pressed the wick, the lamp leaned its light, her shadow and his joining for one beat, then splitting. My throat jammed like corn grit in a feed sack. No sentence could stand here without breaking. Every object spoke instead. She hung the dipper back on the nail, facing the wall. The chip folded into its own shadow. Her hand drew away slow, like pulling a blade from a sheath. He lifted a wood plank from the porch rail, leaned it to the wall, its end touching ground. Didn't bar the door, didn't close the gate, only put his weight in the right place. The lamp still burned. The wick stayed quiet. The light no longer shook. From the fence came one small knock, like a rope's end brushing wood. Then silence, a long time. He lifted the tin cup from the porch step, set it in her hand. She didn't drink. The cup passed. Gate had 2 short boot prints, toes turned into the yard, then back out. A chip in the gate's nail where gravel had scratched, a mark you had to bend to see. Inside, the basin filled last night still stood flat. She came out behind me. The chipped wooden dipper hung askew on the nail, its mouth turned to the wall. She touched the dipper's base, testing if the chill remained. He stepped out a beat later. His eyes went straight to the rope on the post, then over the saddle. His hand touched nothing. The horse jerked once, mane shivering, breath blowing a thin stream. Its ears turned, hearing clear to the barn. The round black eyes didn't blink. I stepped to the post. The smell of wet leather pushed from the saddle, bit at my nose. The horse's back was warm, the night sweat already set. The rope bore a pinch mark in one spot, as if someone had tightened then let go. The rope's end stayed even. The knot sat square in its center. I looked up at the porch lamp. Its glass held a layer of thin smoke, the fingerprint from whoever touched it in the night now clearer. The wick was shorter by half a grain. Someone had pinched it. She passed me, not brushing my shoulder. Her skirt brushed the fence lightly, leaving a streak of dew. Her hand rested on the horse's head for a moment, then withdrew. The wet saddle chilled her fingertips. Her fingers curled slightly. The smell of old leather grease rose from the seam. The canteen loop was empty. He stepped to the gate, stopped. The latch still lay in its old groove, unmoved. The boot prints didn't overlap any others. I bent low. Fine sand at the post's base held 2 red hairs caught in the rope, thin as thread. The wind lifted them, then set them back exactly. No one answered the question that hadn't been asked. The lamp was out. The stranger's horse stood there like a thing left in care. She turned back to the porch, looked at the lamp for a moment. Its light was gone. The soot mark had deepened, nearly a full circle. She walked straight to the kitchen, took the dipper, set it mouth down on the table. The wood's thud was sharp, cut short. Her hand dried in the morning air. He stayed still, shoulders loose, an inch into the wet earth. He climbed 3 rungs, left hand on the beam, right prying the sheet iron edge. The pry bar bit into the rusted nail head. The scrape was like a spoon dragged on stone. A section of roofing came free, water streaking black down the wooden gutter. He removed the leaking sheet. A nail dropped to the porch, rolled to the step, lay still like a bead of mud. A spider crawled from its seam, hanging in the air on a new thread. Against the storeroom wall leaned an old barn door panel. The hinges still clung, one bent like an old fingernail. The place below the latch shone from years of hands. I dragged the panel under the ladder. The wood was heavy, rain-swollen, giving a hollow gulp from its core. He stepped down 2 rungs, took it, shoved it up onto the roof with his thigh. A dark blue vein stood on his wrist. He laid the panel over the gap just cleared, tapped the edge with a hammer. The wood's sound was thick, no echo, as if sealing a chest lid. I handed up nails. He didn't look, but his hand came to the right place. The hammer worked steady. Its rhythm taught the sparrows how to be quiet. He wedged a thin brace inside. The handsaw drew back and forth. Wood dust rose, clinging to his arm hair like chalk crumbs. On the roof, sunlight broke through clouds, touching the oil stain on the old panel. The mark showed the latch's shadow like a forgotten letter. He turned the panel so the letter faced in. She stood at the step, looking up, one hand shading her eyes from dust. Her hair dried slowly, stiff from well-water salt. No questions, no comment. He spread warm pine pitch along the seam. The hot resin smell mixed with iron, warm and sharp on the tongue. It flowed, sealing the crack like closing a cut. He came down the ladder, set the hammer on the long porch table, in the place it had held for many seasons, wiped resin from his fingers onto his work pants, leaving a dark streak. No reason given, none needed. The leak now covered by the old barn door panel, like a weight set down. Inside the storeroom, the iron basin was empty. The coat from the night before lay under it, half dry, the other edge still dark. I lifted if to show. Only set the dipper back into the basin, drew again, repeated exactly. I stood a body's length away, watching the chip work like a mouth that knew its way. The motion repeated 3 times, the timing exact. Each time, not a drop fell outside the basin or onto the ground. The rancher leaned his hand on the porch post, watched for half a minute, then turned away. He lifted the tin cup, rinsed it once in the basin, set it on the step to dry, the rim tilted toward the sun. On the dipper's edge, the chip was a shade brighter than the wood around it. She ran her fingernail along it, wiping away one last fleck of mud. Her finger came clean, no need to rinse again. The porch sparrow landed on the well's rim, tilted its head at the water's surface, didn't dare touch, then flew. Inside, the stove ash had been cleared from the top, only cold coals left like half-burnt corn kernels. She passed through, running her hand across the table, sweeping the dust into her palm like gathering salt. I saw the turn in how she did everything steady and quiet. By noon, the sun's shadow broke the yard in half. On the fence, the saddle still hung. The new rope, not neat as if tied by rule. I touched the leather. It was dry on the outside, still warm inside, the smell of grease rising sweet and sharp. The white salt mark from last night had thinned to a faint edge. No one claimed it. No voice called, no hoofbeats came. Only the sound of insects chewing grass husks at the yard's edge. I untied the rope, meaning to take the saddle into the dry storeroom. The knot was strange to the hand, 2 loops, and came free in one pull, though it hadn't slipped all morning. I learned its pull, fixed it in memory, tied it back the same. He stood by the gate, looking down the trail to town as if at a cut sealing over. His shoulders dropped half an inch, his hands neither closing nor opening. Dust from far off didn't bother to reach us. She brought a dry cloth, wiped the saddle in one long stroke. The stroke left a clean line thin as a knife mark, vanishing at the edge. The saddle stayed, like an unclaimed history was coated in a thin soot. She dampened the towel, wiped from mouth to base, leaving no ridge untouched. She poured the old oil into a small bottle. The lamp was filled again with new oil. Its smell was sharp, lightly green, unlike the old with its taste of ash. The wick was cut short. She pinched it once with her nails. The wick's end squared, fitting the chimney's edge like one set of teeth to another. She hung the lamp higher than before, by a finger's width. The nail hook moved up to the higher hole in the beam. The old soot mark lay lower now, a line like a gauge. I stepped back 3 paces, looked at the porch again. The afternoon light touched the freshly cleaned glass, sparking a small grain of light on its edge, like the eye of someone just washed. The rancher passed by, glanced up once, didn't stop. She set the old oil bottle in the kitchen corner, marked it with a length of twine tied around its neck. I knew the order would hold from now on. The stove was cold, the lamp unlit, but the order in the room gave the feeling of a voice, small but clear in the house. No words of thanks were spoken. Near evening the son leaned toward the gate. He carried a new gate bar into the yard, pine wood, flat-faced, beveled edge, unstained. He measured with a jute cord, one end tied to the old nail, drawn straight to the opposite post. The taut cord gave a twang like a slack string. He took a chisel, a hammer, set the chisel's edge to the faint chalk mark. The hammer fell steady, the cut in the wood the depth of a fingernail. The smell of fresh pine rose. Wood dust clung to his arms, chin, and chest, where 2 buttons were open. He didn't brush it away. He bored the latch hole with a hand drill. The turn was dry, even, like a small wheel over fine sand. A long shaving drew out of the hole, curling like someone's hair. He set the bar into its groove, tested push and pull. The slide was smooth, the final stop clean as someone locking in a thought. He was satisfied with the fit, added nothing. I held the post while he tightened the last bolt. The wrench was homemade from flat iron, its edge worn, but the bite was good. He turned until the metal's sound changed from hollow to full, stopping exactly there. She stood in the porch, beside the coiled rope. Next to it, the hammer just used lay crosswise on the shelf, its head turned inward. The wind shifted, carrying the mixed scent of new oil and freshly cut wood, faint as an admission that needed no words. The gate was bolted. The yard lay flat again after days of ripple. We went into the house in the same order as before. Him first, her second, me last. No one needed to look back at the saddle. It knew its place until someone claimed it. In the kitchen, the afternoon light climbed to the old soot mark, stopped there, didn't pass. The oil lamp looked through its clear glass like someone just bathed, hair still damp. I poured a little water into the tin cup, set it in the middle of the table, its mouth turned toward the door. No more words. The things had taken their places. Our part was to keep still. Weeks later, the sun was full ripe. Grass returned, new shoots crowding the old bare patches. Gravel in the yard was dry white, crunching under heels. The oil lamp was lit only at night. By day, it hung high on the new hook, glass clean, wick cut square, oil tank showing a pale green stripe. Sunlight swam through the glass, leaving a fine point of light on the metal rim. In the morning, I set the basin out to dry in the porch corner. She combed the damp straw behind the barn, her hand steady, never stopping halfway. He checked the fence, the back of his shirt dusted with fine sawdust, his steps making deep prints in the same spacing as before. The chipped wooden dipper hung by the well. A thin hemp cord wrapped its neck twice, not neat as a button. The chip was rounder, smoother, its wood lightening from hands meeting water. She filled 2 dippers for the kitchen without spilling a drop. Her left hand pinched the unchipped edge, her right supported the base, the motion repeating like a drill long learned. Water ran straight down the chip's shallow groove into her palm, never spilling outside. By noon, the sun's shadow drew a sharp line through the yard. The saddle still hung on the fence, its leather darkened, the stitching at the canteen loop frayed by one more fiber. I patched in the yard, the ash drank the water, the ground firmed. The hen glittered with dust in its feathers, pecked its feet, then chased its own shadow. In the storeroom, the old coat was fully dry, folded in 2, hung beside the coiled rope. Evening came late, the gold light touching the soot mark on the porch beam. The lamp stayed unlit, but stood ready, like a doorkeeper with eyes open who spoke nothing. When night came on time, she lit the lamp with one finger. The wick caught lightly, with a sound like breath into a cupped hand. The light didn't spread wide, only set a warm circle on the table. We sat, each to a task, no extra words. Over the nights, the thin smoke film on the glass lessened from frequent cleaning. I saw the wick shorten evenly, each cut taking 1 grain. Tight habits made the house able to hear itself. The stretch of wood, the touch of clay bowls, the cowbell once, then nothing. One night the wind rose. The lamp's light tilted a moment, then stood still. She cupped her hands around it, unhurried, and the light held. Next morning, the lamp hung quiet, not yet its hour. The dipper held 2 small drops at the chip from night dew. She tilted it lightly, the drops merging into the basin, whole again. I measured time by the new scratches on the gate bar. Each week, 1 fine mark from a hand's touch. The marks lined up straight, like pen strokes on oiled paper. No loud words, no breaking sounds. Each thing in place, steady as the stones under the foundation. The season's wind shifted, running low along the ground, carrying the scent of heather from far hills to the door. At slant noon, the wind brought the gate bar's creak into the kitchen. An old sound, but still strong, like a joint reminding where it hinges. No one went to open it. He stood on the porch, only tilting his head, listening instead of answering. She kept stacking wood on the rack, all ends one way, the smooth ends outward. The new gate bar aged quickly under his hand. Bolt heads darkened from sweat and dust. The latch's track had a thin, greasy shine from cooking oil mixed with dust, running the slides full length. The wind creaked again. I set the cup on the table slower than usual, letting the dipper back on its nail after each use. If hung lower, the wind swung it to touch the post, giving a small sound. The nail held firm enough to keep it still, bent enough to remind it wasn't new. By afternoon the wind had strengthened. The creak thickened, crowded, then thinned, like someone knocking without hands. No one opened. The gate stood the way it should. He went to the gate only when needing to see the sky. His eyes stayed on the clouds road, not the trail. His hand touched the bar, slid it once, to hear the sound he had tuned the week before. She hung cloths on the line across the yard. The cloths flapped, the smell of cheap soap riding with the sun. She chose the thick cloths to block the gust, the thin for the calmer stretch. By day, the lamp was still, letting the wind and the gate speak. The clean glass reflected the sky, drawing a thin green line into the house. I wiped the table, pulling the rag along the wood grain, not across. Toward evening, the wind eased. The gate bar fell silent. The grass gave up, lying flat. A young bird fell from the roof, rolled once, then righted itself. She lifted it, set it on the low eave, her hand opening as if it had never closed. It stayed a moment, then flew, not looking back. No one opened the gate for any sound without footsteps. The gate was bolted, like a sentence finished without edits. Night came like someone who knew the house, not knocking, walking in on cold breath alone. That night, the lamp was lit, its light resting on the gate bar in a thin strip. The strip went, then was gone, leaving a mark only a familiar hand could feel. After that, the wind lay down outside the fence. Only the earth's breath remained. Late the next morning after the wind, I had business past the outer yard. The trail ran along the edge of bare grass, gravel clicking under my soles. The smell of new dust rose, with the faint sweetness of early sun. I looked toward the porch. I passed by, saw the oil lamp out, its glass thin as an onion skin just wiped, without a mark. But the wick's heart was still red inside. A small pink dot, hidden beneath the wick, breathing like a firefly after a night's run. The wooden spoon touched the clay bowl once, didn't repeat. She must have just set it down, her hand letting go without excess. I saw the old soot line under the lamp as a mark of time, thinned by half a shade. Each day it pulled back more from steady cleaning, but the trace remained, like a writer not wiping out old words so they could guide the next. My hand touched the doorframe. The wood was warm from late sun. A thin speck of sawdust caught under my nail. I flicked it, and it broke to dust. I heard the cow in the barn cough. The neck bell rang once, then quiet, like someone coughing before returning to steady breath. No bootsteps beyond the fence, no strange shadow, no asking, and no need to know. Everything answered in its standing place. The lamp out, but its heart still hot cooling, the warmth just left, the water just half drunk. I left the porch toward the road. My shadow fell across the worn track, then split when the dirt changed color. A sparrow darted from the well frame, beak carrying a drop small enough to repay a debt. Behind me, the house did not call. The gate bar kept its silence. The dipper would be hung back after use, so I believed, though I didn't turn to check. On the road, someone's old hoof marks had faded under the sun. The soft ground had hardened, cracking into small triangles like fish scales. Dust clung to my trouser hem but carried no weight. I thought of the knot on the saddle, the wick pinched short, the soot line retreating. Each one a word written with little ink, marked on a day. Read long enough, you knew someone was living here, standing cold, without any cry. I went on, without looking back. The wind came off the fields, lifting the smell of dried crowsfoot grass and a thin smoke far away, not from this house. A cricket sang from a stone crevice by the verge, steady enough to pace steps. The road spread ahead, the sun neither steep nor harsh. Behind me, the lamp out, saving for night, the red wick heart cooling to keep the habit. The gate bolted, the house at rest, the people at rest, like a sentence left finished without a period, needing none. By now, the wind burns, how your dipper pours, whether your gate you choose to bolt or leave open. It needn't be long, only enough to know we still stand beside things that keep their word. Night falls, the lamp may go out. The wick heart will keep one bead of red in the glass. That is enough to take the next step in the morning.